Hi everyone, and welcome back. Sorry for the long delay between videos. I've been super busy and I just haven't had a chance to put together one of these videos because they do take quite a lot of time to edit, and I've just had priority of getting stuff done on the house. As well as that, my good friend who very generously has been helping me a huge amount on the house asked me if I could help him out with some boat maintenance. So I had the opportunity to work on these great big beautiful yachts. Just a great learning experience, learned things that I never thought I'd ever be working on and thought I couldn't really pass up the chance. So I've done that. Oh, by the way, this is the official mascot of Papa's Project. This is Loki. He's my Australian Jack Russell. He flew out here with me a few years ago, and yeah, so he's been helping. Well, not really, but you know, he tries his best. He tries to keep the cats away. This is important. Right. So as I said, been working on some boats. I'll throw a couple of quick photos and whatnot. Um, and it's been really interesting. So had to take a little bit of a break from the house, which meant a little bit of break from making content. Now, in this particular video, I'm going to be going through primarily finishing off the electrics, which are now done. All the sockets are in place. I've done the Ethernet run as well for the back studio, slash office slash gaming room. The bathrooms had a lot of work done on it. That'll be in an upcoming video, which I'll talk about in a second. I've also had to do a huge amount of research and learning. I'm about to embark on using a huge amount of very expensive materials that I can't replace. I can't screw this up. Also, this is a kind of one and done situation. Once I've put these tiles and this plumbing under the concrete, the only way to repair this is to completely rip it out again. So I had to make sure I knew what I was doing and that I had a plan and we knew how to execute that plan. So that's all good. Happy days. I've got the content, the film's in the can, we're good to go. So in this video, I'm just going to be going through the last of the electrics and a little bit of work on some of the tiles that I've started now. I've done my first bit of ever tiling. That is for the area between the lounge and the kitchen where we took that wall out. That's all come out really, really nicely, as you'll see in this video later on. And just once again, want to say thank you for everyone to continue to watch. I actually lose a single subscriber, which is amazing. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me, even though I haven't uploaded in, God, nearly 6 weeks. So thanks again. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will speak to you soon. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I think as we've established so far, I'm not a builder, and I'm certainly not an electrician. But I am running all the electrics in the house and doing all the wiring. So I've had to learn a few things over the last couple of days. I thought I'd take a chance to run you through what I'm using, what connectors I'm using, the kinds of wire that we've got in the house, because we've got different ones, and they've had an impact on how I'm doing the connections. So I'll go through these. I'm going to change the camera angle because it's a little bit awkward and you can see a bit better that way. But it's quite interesting. Well, it's interesting to me anyway. So it might be interesting to you. So I'll go through that and we'll go on from there to finish off the wiring in the rest of the house. Thanks. Okay, so the stuff that was predominantly in the house to start with is this. So it's really very thin, 1 mil, I think, single core copper wiring. That was running pretty much everything apart from this cooker line, which was a slightly thicker line. That's really not going to cope with what I want. Now, the house initially had, I think, 9 sockets. I've put 23 doubles in altogether, so obviously I need something a bit tougher. As well as changing the singles like circuit ring system that I had, I've put a number of separate lines in to spread the load across the house. Now, for most of the sockets, we are using this. This is 1.5 mil 3-core flex, it's called. So what that is it's 3 individual cables in a rubber sheathing, but this is braided copper. So it's well, braided. It's like a bunch of thin strands in a bunch, obviously, that's going through the center of the core. For the heavier stuff, we've used this, which is 2.5 mil, and then we've also got a 4 mil for the cooker, which is the heaviest load. Okay, so now that we've got the ends up, what you can see is that, as I said, it's a bunch of thin strands together. And what can happen is if you're connecting this into something, when you're crushing it down, it just flattens it rather than being solid single core, which has much better contact. And you can get little bits sticking out. Anyway, long story short, it's not the ideal way to do it. What I could have done is gotten a soldering iron, individually put solder on the ends of each of these so that, you know, they've got a bit heavier, better connection. But that's a pain in the ass. So instead, what I've got is these. Now, I've got two different kinds. They're these little connectors. Basically what happens is the wire gets pushed inside there, and then you use this handy little tool, and that crushes that around the wire, creating a solid end piece with a really nice, easy connection that can go into any back of the socket or anything like that. So, to show you how that works, for example, if we were to want to put these two in a sequence, we take these two wires and we just join that together like that. There we go. Now, I know these are different sizes, so I'm not doing that in there, but anyway. So then we check whether it fits in properly. Have a look in there, and you probably can't see it, but you can see the copper almost reaching to the end. Then take our little tool, crush it, turns into a nice little square, and that thing is on there. That is not coming off. So, actually, look, the plastic came off, but the metal didn't. Okay, so really solid, really good connection. That is what I'm using to go into the back of sockets, where I'm creating linkages for the circuit. Now, there's a few areas in the house where, as part of the ring, it was going through sockets, but we're changing that now. So rather than just twisting wire together or using like Wago connectors, which are great and I absolutely love them, but I feel they're more of a temporary thing, purely because I don't know, I just don't feel entirely safe with having them in the wall permanently. Anyway, they're probably perfectly fine, but I'd prefer this. What I'm using instead are these. Same deal. Use a little connector, stick that on there, crimp it down, have a connector on this end. Cut that already, but that's fine. We'll take that off. There we go. And then we put a connector on the other end. And then these just unscrew like that. That goes in there. And then the other one goes on the other side. You screw them down, clamp them together, and you've got a super solid connection. So that's basically it. So I'm doing my best. I think it all makes sense. I am getting the electrician in to double check everything and to run a full systems test on everything before I sign off on the project. So, hope that was useful. Thanks.
Here we go. Safety first. So the mains breaker is off and I've checked that it's all safe using my Parkside current tester to avoid any nasty shocks. Then I need to clean each of the socket cages where some of the plaster dropped into or onto the tiny threads for the screws that hold the face plates into place. I used a multi-tool and a Dremel with a flappy sanding brush, and they worked a treat to get rid of all the overhanging plaster. With that done, it's time to prep the endpoints using my connectors, wire them into the sockets, checking I have the live and neutrals in the right holes, and a final check that everything's lined up right. Breaker on, and time to retest to make sure we've got a good flow of electricity running through each of the linked wires to the sockets. This is one of those rare moments in life where a bright red flashing light is actually a good thing, so I'm happy with that. This section was an additional spur running off the established old ring, so the linked section got a blanking plate over it and the rest of the sockets got secured into place. Then it's essentially rinse and repeat another 21 times. Now, I won't bore you with all the sockets, so there's only a couple more clips showing my efforts. Some were for dedicated lines like the AC, and then the next one was a connection to the old ring, where I had to splice some additional wires together again. I would have loved to have replaced all the wiring, but this is actually in pretty decent shape with adequate wiring, and it all runs through some really old metal pipes underneath the tiles, so there was really no easy way to replace it, and we decided best thing to do was just leave it in place. Now, this was one of those she'll be right decisions, to be honest. After running the conduit through the wall and 2 wardrobes, I really didn't want to have to run another channel for a double spur down to floor level for this one switch. So this one ended up just at arm's reach above the balcony door frame instead. Moving into the kitchen, it's another couple of sockets to install, as well as the wiring for the oven and kitchen extractor. After removing the extractor and pulling the oven out, we get another wonderful example of the quality of the previous wiring. Now, I don't know about you guys, but personally, I'm not keen on the idea of the highest amperage device in the entire house being connected by twisted together wire and some electrical tape. So, another example of why all this work was desperately needed. Using the trusty yellow wire puller, I managed to run the new wiring up and down for both devices and prep the ends for when I'm ready to get them installed again. And we're back on the roof, this time to finally wire up the pump and hot water system. Now, this is another one of those really expensive pieces of kit that I could easily damage doing this wrong. So I decided to double check the diagrams repeatedly before committing to any wiring decisions. And then the wind blew over the camera and I didn't notice. So here's the final product. Time to tackle the final piece of the electrical puzzle, rejoining the old ring where I knocked down the wall. You can see me tinkering with my original plan and coming to a few realizations, which I'll get into momentarily. So, I thought I should probably explain what I'm actually doing here. I have what's called a ring circuit in this house. That means that there's as the name implies, a circular circuit of connections that go from one place to another. Now initially, obviously, as you know, I had this wall here and there was a set of sockets here. I've removed those, so what I need to now do is create a junction here. They're just going to be hardwired. I'm not going to have any plugs or anything in here, and then I'm going to have to fix this tiling. So initially, I was going to use this thing. I've used that in another area in the house, but these are more designed to be put into the wall and then sealed over so that you don't need to get to them again. Or if you do, certainly not somewhere that might get wet. This is going to be in the floor. Obviously, I'm going to be mopping the floor now and then, so I can't risk water getting into this, because if it does, if it touches any of those live circuits, it could blow my entire ring. So I've got this. Now this is a waterproof junction box. It's got a gasket built into it so that it's properly watertight. I'm gonna put this in here somehow, but this is not really the look I'm going for. The challenge is, and I'm just realizing that it's actually too high. So I'm gonna have to either dig out a bit more concrete there, or it'll be at that level, which is horrible. Okay, gonna have to do some planning and some thinking, and I'll get back to you. Wish me luck. plan. Now stick with me because this might seem really dumb, but it kind of makes sense in my brain. So the reason I wanted this waterproof junction box is so that obviously water doesn't get in, but also I want to actually be able to access it. I don't want to lay tiles over the top of this because it's a point of failure. So ideally I'd like it to stay like this but still be able to access it. Now the problem is I can't find a floor box that fits this area without buying some crazy €250 triple socket industrial thing. And I just don't want to do that. So I'm thinking what I'm going to try and do is mock up what I want to do eventually, which is to use a tile. This is one that came out of pretty much this slot. You know, it's just the right size. It's as big as that. I'm going to lay some wood in here, and then I'm going to try to attach a hinge to this so that it could be lifted up like that. Now, once I've got that done, it should, in theory, be a fairly simple task to just drill a circular hole in there and put one of those little lay flat handle things. And then once I've got that, I just need to like attach a bit of a gasket-y thing around there, just for extra safety, and then that should work. At least it should in my brain. So I'm gonna try it. Wish me luck. Should be interesting. Made a bit of a decision. I think it'll work. The theory is sound, but rather than putting a plate here, I think I'm actually going to put it there, and then let the hinge go up like that. I think that'll work better. Also, I think, well, first off, we're not going to use wood. I'm going to have a look at the hardware shop tomorrow and see if I can get like a piece of plastic, similar thickness, so it's got enough, you know, structural integrity to hold the weight of that. And then, because obviously the hinge has to be at the top so that it actually lifts like that rather than trying to push against it. So if I can get some kind of a hinge that I can recess a little bit into the plastic, and then it lifts from there, and I can carve out a little bit of a tile there and some of the plastic there, it should work. So tomorrow, hardware shop, we're going to look what we can see, figure something out, and then I think we're going to get this mocked up again, make sure everything works before we do it with the real tiles. And then obviously, first off, you know, this needs to have new concrete laid, and it needs to be prepped for plastering, prepped for tiling, and then we'll go from there. But success. I think we have a workable plan there.
Phase 1 of Project Trapdoor, which I've decided to call this in honor of Bert, the classic old cartoon that I used to watch in the UK. Legendary show, you might remember it, but if you do, you're as old as I am. Anyway, that aside, the theory is sound. I think this should work. I figured out a couple of things. First off, wood is a no-go. It's going to absorb moisture, it's going to end up rotting, it's going to be a problem, then I have to fix it. No good. So, got some aluminium. I think it's like a door frame thing, but it should do the job nicely. It's a good width for it. It's the widest piece I could find. I might need something a little bit longer for the actual thing. But what I'm going to try out now, because I've decided that I'm not going to have it flipping on the long edge, I'm going to have it flip on the short edge up like that. I need to figure out how to drill into the edge of tile without cracking it, and how to mount a hinge to it that can then be recessed into there. That's going to be the job for today. Well, for now anyway, and I'm going to try that out, see how we go, and then readjust for phase 3. So, wish me luck. Here we go. Okay. New fashion accessory. Gorgeous Buddy Holly style granddad glasses. Very nice, very cool, very retro. I've got them because doing small work, especially when I was doing electrical stuff, I realized I do actually still need to wear my glasses that I normally only wear for reading and close work. But my really fancy Oakleys are not really suitable for the building site, so I got these little beauties for cheap from the local optician, and they're doing the job really well. Anyway, I digress once again. Right, I managed to get the hole drilled. I have also learned that apparently, whilst Parkside make really lovely diamond tip drill bit things for tiles, they're not much use past 3 holes. So, not super impressed. Don't know if I used it wrong, if I let it get too hot or whatever. Probably my fault. But anyway, that's not really doing the job. So I'm just using a masonry drill, which did the job just fine. I've got the holes drilled in, so that works. I've got it really well anchored, happy with that. What I need to now do is figure out how to get it sufficiently down, recessed, so that I can actually have that pretty much hidden in the floor. Now looking at it, I think I just need to take a little bit of this edge off. Not entirely sure I'm going to do that. I'm going to try one of these fat drill bits and see if I can't just shave a bit off the edge. So we're going to try that now. And then it's just on to the mounting, I guess. And then that's the plan sorted for when we do it. So I'm going to do that now.
Here comes the obligatory request for your subs and likes. I'll keep it short because the subscribers I already have are pretty awesome. If you're enjoying watching my bumbling attempts at home renovation, click the button and make my suffering a little bit more worthwhile. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to call that a success. I think we got there in the end. Took a few more tools than I expected it to, but it all worked out. Just had to figure out which tool was best for which job. Luckily, I've got most of them here that I could possibly need. I have gotten the hinge installed. Now, I am going to need to recess it a bit more with the final product, just to make it a little bit neater and create less of a gap here. I'm also probably going to use a slightly different hinge. I'm going to have a look at the hardware shop and what my options are. But I think this aluminium plate solution is going to work really well, because what I can do is I'll have that in the ground and I can put quite long bolts to give it extra stability, and then I'll put the handle in here, and then when I want to access it, I can just flip it open, close it up, job done. I can access the junction box. I'm also going to put a rubber mat on here just to create an extra bit of seal, and then I'll need to figure out how to do the edges. I'm thinking actually probably just a white rubber as well, so it'll match with the grout. But again, that'll be a final product, final finish issue. For now, the base concept of Project Trapdoor is figured out. I'm happy, so I'm going to crack on with some other work, and hopefully soon we'll be getting on to the tiling. Thanks.
Here's the latest addition to the armory, a wet electric tile cutter from Parkside, a bargain at only €50 and hopefully worth the investment for the coming efforts.
Alrighty, good news, bad news situation. So, good news, Parkside tile cutter is a beast. That thing shoots through a 30-odd mil tile, no problem at all. Really nice clean cut, really happy with it. I did get covered in water, so we're going to figure something out about how to try and resolve that. But, bad news. This tile is substantially thicker than these tiles, which I stupidly assumed they'd be the same thickness. They kind of look the same. I didn't clearly measure it. They're about 5 mil proud when I put them into the slot, and that doesn't account for the tile adhesive. So they're pretty much a no-go, because I'm not grinding them down thinner. It's just pointless. Good news again though. In the back of the goat shed, when I first moved in, I spotted a bunch of old tiles that had been left behind, so I neatly stacked them aside and thought maybe they'll come in useful one day. So I've got 2 options. I actually have enough of these brown tiles just to cover this area. I'm gonna have to be super careful when I cut them, because basically I've got very little margin for error. I think they look alright actually. And then I've got a load of these sort of pre-connected tile packs, which I think actually might even look really even better. But what I'm gonna do, so I've laid these out to have a look at.
think they look alright. I'm now going to lay the other ones out and see how they look, and then I'm going to make a decision, and then I'm going to use those instead. So let's do that. Cool. Okay, so this is option 2.1, kind of. 2 in the sense that this is the other tiles, which I actually think look better. I'm not a huge fan of that brown. It's a bit too brown for me. These, however, blend really nicely between the two sets of tiles. So I think they're going to be a winner. Now the question, and this is for 2.1 versus 2.2, is do I cover the junction box, sorry, with 4 tiles like that, which will leave a bit of a gap. I'm not super in love with that. Or this is remarkably similar to that. I mean, it's a slight difference in color, but not a lot. And I could cut a piece just the right size for the cover. You know, I think I've answered my own question. I think that's what we're going to do. Because I've got enough of this that I can screw up one of the cuts for the lifting latch. And that will also let me, and another idea, potentially put a little bit of gypsum board to mount that onto. So that I've actually got a bit of substrate to put on it. So I think that's going to be a winner. I think that'll be the one. Look, it's going to obviously, it's going to be quite obvious that these have been cut, but I'm hoping that I can get away with it. The question, of course, is do I cut half from each side, so half the additional length from each side, and run that little seam along the middle of this channel. It's going to be a lot harder, but it might look better. So, got a bit of thinking to do tonight, I think. It is 5:30 p.m. on a Friday, so I think I'm going to go and get a couple of Coronas, sit down, stare at this for a while, and then make a decision before I go ahead. The good thing is, because it's so small tiles, I've got a buttload of spares. It should be a lot easier to cut and get just right. So I think that's going to be the winner. I like this better. I like this idea better. Although it will be more difficult. Because if there was like a bunch of tiles, then in my brain I'm thinking it wouldn't be so obvious, but I think it's going to be quite jarring. You've got the square and then this little rectangle there. Whereas if these are both kind of rectangular shapes, I think it'll even offset the difference in size quite a bit. So yeah, I think that's the winner. A lot of cutting, a lot of fiddling, but it'll look good. And I've put too much work into all this not to have it look good. So we'll see. Alright, I think time for a beer now. See you soon.
Monday morning, welcome back. So it's been a good weekend. Had a conversation with a couple of friends over a couple of beers, and they agree with me that the best way forward is to use these mosaic tiles. They look the best and they'll fit in space really well. I am going to cut them on either side and get that center line running down the middle of this just to give it a bit more, a better aesthetic. Now, what that does mean though is that this concrete I've initially laid, I laid to a height that was right for these tiles, not these tiles. These tiles are probably 3, maybe even 4 times thinner than the thick ones. So the maximum thickness of the tile adhesive that I'm using, unfortunately, is 1.5 centimeters or 15 mil. This is closer to 30 to 33. So I need to just lay a thin layer of more substrate underneath. I'm going to use the flex reinforced concrete because that's easy to work and dries really quick. And then while that's drying, I'm going to cut the tiles to shape, and then hopefully by the time I've done all those cuts, this will be ready to tape on the tile adhesive. So better get going. So I want to get this done today. Let's go. that is all done for my first ever attempt at tiling. I have cut all the tiles to shape. I've laid them all out so I know which ones are going where, because some are a little bit wider than others. I think it's going to make a pretty good pattern. I've managed to get the center line pretty much spot on. So all that's left to do now is mix up some tile adhesive, stick it on, and then stick the tiles down and hope for the best. So let's go.
I'm using this tile leveling system here that uses clips that slot under each tile and wedges to apply pressure to keep all the tiles level with each other. Because I ended up having to use pairs instead of sets of 6 tiles, there were a lot of these, but hopefully they'll end up with a result better than I could do. Once the tile adhesive is dry, you simply snap off the extended bits and it should be a really smooth finish. There we go, wedges are in place along with some little spacers to make sure I have gaps for all the grouting. I also did a test fit of my trapdoor and it's looking pretty sweet. Now all I have to do is remove the red wedges and those little blue tile spacers. Then it's out with the rubber mallet to snap off the remaining clips. Once that's done, I did have to do a little bit of scraping and cleaning between the tiles. I got caught up with other work and ended up leaving the adhesive to completely dry rather than dealing with this inside the suggested 24 hours. So that took a little bit of extra effort. Finally, a nice clean, and here's the result. I'm rather pleased with my first ever bit of tiling. It's not a professional standard, but it's better than I've seen in a lot of houses. Still have to grout the gaps, but I'll be doing that when I grout the kitchen tiles on the wall, so it's not really worth opening a bag of grout for such a small job. I still have plenty more coming in the next week or so. Thanks as always for watching, and see you soon.